in for a scare.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Chatting Cinema. I'm Gianni.
I'm Flynn.
I'm Luke.
I'm Chase.
And today, as you may have just guessed, we are talking about horror movies, the genre itself, what it makes us feel, which is generally fear, right? Occasionally love, occasionally laughter.
You know, I thought we were only talking about Goosebumps, so I'm kind of disappointed right now. Because, like, I could go off on all of the Mask episodes.
Goosebumps.
Monster Blood?
Monster Blood 2.
anybody?
Monster Blood 3.
Monster Blood.
Hamster Monster Blood.
What's the scariest movies you've ever seen? Like, if you had to pick one right now, scariest thing.
Midsommar.
I was going to say Midsommar, yeah.
Hereditary.
So for me, The Strangers, when because I saw it very young, and I am still, probably rightfully so, deathly afraid of home invasions. Like that movie kept me up at night more than anything. Like, because I saw it young and I was like, oh my god, somebody's gonna break into my house.
Going off of that, Goosebumps terrified me as a child, so I knew I was not ready for horror movies when I got older. Still am not.
I was really terrified by every horror movie, Goosebumps included, when I was a child, but it's turned to like a fascination as I've gotten older. Because I was like, why do I feel this way? Why do these things scare me? And I want to understand them. And that's what made horror my favorite genre.
Yeah, for sure. I really liked to read as a kid, so I loved reading Goosebumps. Because
so you're telling me you're a nerd?
Yeah. Oh, we'll get into nerdiness here. So Goosebumps is so like easy to consume, and they're so effective as shorter stories. So I read a ton of Goosebumps, and I had the complete collection of Alvin Schwartz's Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. So even shorter stories, so easy to consume, so easy to keep reading and get scared, and that spurred on a love of horror for me and horror storytelling. So that continued as I grew older, and I was really into creepypasta. And not like, listen, Jeff the Killer and like, there's like an edgy like creepypasta thing that I'm not super into. But some of the best horror storytelling, like C.K. Walker's Baraska.
I love Baraska.
It's so good.
When you told me about that.
It is so good. And that to me, it's very Stranger Things with a bit of an edge, or It, or supernatural coming of age horror stories, because I think that's my favorite subsection of horror, coming of age, because again, like it's ties into something. There's something so horrifying about growing up, so it plays to that in a sort of exaggerated way that I really love.
See, coming as somebody who doesn't watch a lot of horror, that's how I'm actually watching it, because coming-of-age movies are my favorite. So, like, I watched the new version of It, didn't go near the sewer grate under my mailbox for a month and a half, because it was in the summer. Like, okay, so I was watching It was summertime. I only watch movies when it's completely daylight out, which Midsommar is now ruined, but I only watch in the daylight, so I can't like go outside and get freaked out if I have to do something. So I'm watching It, and then all of a sudden, like, I start the first scene. It's raining in the movie. It starts raining in real life. I'm just like, I'm not about this. This is not okay. Then lightning strikes, and I lose my power the first time you see Pennywise. And I'm like, are you kidding me?
It was it.
So then the power comes back on, and I'm like, do I keep watching it? And my mom is like, you gonna be scared? I'm like, you know I am. And then I did, and I was terrified. Didn't go near sewers for a month. So, yeah. Although, so the first time I ever saw one in theaters, because I would never go to the movie theater. I just said I would only watch them in daylight. I'm not going into a crowded movie theater. Was Don't Breathe.
Okay.
Very random. But because it was summertime, all my friends wanted to go to the movies, and they picked Don't Breathe. And I was like, I'm not staying home alone doing nothing. And I was scared. So, yeah, good job, Don't Breathe. You did it.
I have a funny story about Don't Breathe. This is unrelated to this episode, but I saw that in theaters, and the same day, it was like a double feature for me. I saw Southside with You right before it, which is the story of Barack and Michelle Obama's first date. That was such a weird contrast.
What a combo.
Why aren't they playing that double feature at the drive-in? I'll never know.
You can tell we're not horror people.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Stranger Things also gave me a really good introduction into it. Even though it's not as much horror, it's more thriller. Like, that show made me like it a lot more. And, I mean, because of you, I'm watching more, like, horror-esque movies.
Yeah, there's so much good horror. It gets disrespected as a genre.
Yeah, definitely.
And, that's not covering new ground saying that. I mean, you know, you go to Us and Lupita Nyong'o's performance and just like not being on the radar for awards, or Hereditary with Toni Collette. Like, these performances are so good and so believable, and because there's like B horror and schlocky horror, people ignore it. And I don't buy into the idea of like high concept horror, because I think it's a way to like gatekeep people that like horror as like a no, the other movies you like, they're dumb, but this one's okay. Yeah. But still, like, you know, there are fantastic horror movies coming out now with crazy good performances at the center, great effects work, great visual stuff, and I feel like it's almost treated as like a ugly stepchild.
Yeah. I mean, horror comes from like us and like what we're afraid of. If you look at like Hereditary, which I brought up as like my scariest movie, it's a movie about, you know, a cult and like your family being evil, but it's also about mental illness and how that's passed down through family, and it just uses like a cult and demon as that metaphor.
Right.
One of my favorite movies, I watched this for a class I was taking, The Thing. Have you ever seen
John
that?
Carpenter's The Thing.
Yeah. It's about a monster that can infect you and become you and assimilate you, but it's also about like the AIDS crisis, because it's a monster that spreads through blood and anyone can have it. Or you could also, the older version of it could also be about communism. It could be anyone, that kind of thing. I think horror encapsulates the time that comes out in.
Yes.
And it encapsulates things that, it may be about a demon or an alien, but it's also about, well, us and what we're going to encounter in our real lives. And I think that's really powerful.
Yeah. A way to tell these really real stories. Jordan Peele gets at that so well. Get Out and Us, racially, class conscious wise, like you're saying, speaking to what's happening now, it's really important. And I think I agree that horror has a really like unique ability to do that and tell these stories in a realistic way. Candyman, the original Candyman, is racially conscious and a really good story. And I think that the cool thing about bringing Candyman back into the lexicon is that now more people are going to revisit the original Candyman and find something they really like out of that.
Shout out to Jeremy Newman in our video production class. Remember he showed that movie?
Yeah, he did. It's a great movie.
Yeah. I, along with Luke, I don't really watch a lot of horror movies, but I will say that the found footage films, when done right, scare me beyond belief. Because, I don't know, everyone has had that moment, I think, in your house where you're like, is there someone in here with me? Like,
we had one in this office the other day.
Yeah. And I'm just thinking, like, how do you make a film like that where you're not filming any monster on screen? Like, nothing's there, but you can make it so terrifying. Like, I think about films like the first Paranormal Activity terrified me. A found footage kind of mockumentary style film, Lake Mungo, that is the scariest thing I think I've ever seen in the way of found footage mockumentary style filmmaking, because it feels so real. It really does. And I think Paranormal Activity, the first one, really accomplished that too. I felt like I was watching a real couple just trying to like figure out what was going on in their house. And it's terrifying. Yeah. A more recent film is The Invisible Man, which after coming out of it, I didn't think it was like that scary. It didn't keep me up at night, only because you kind of know like what it is, and it's revealed in the trailer anyway, but I still won't say in case anyone goes to see it. But to me, it's the things that you can't see that are like the most terrifying. And then to springboard off of what you said about Get Out and Us, those are really scary films too, with a lot of good social commentary, and that's important. And then more recently, also this summer, I saw Midsommar, which is this creepy thing about, you know, getting into the wrong group of friends and dealing with loss and tragedy in your life, and has some scary imagery in it.
So. I was gonna say what you just said about what you don't see scares you the most. Midsommar completely throws that out the window and was like, we gonna show you all of it. And then, like I said, like most horror movies take place at night, so you can't see what's happening. Not Midsommar is literally about a festival where it's day for most of the day in Sweden. So you gonna see everything.
Well, what scares me about Midsommar is that it's more of a story about bad people than it is about like some sentient being or some otherworldly thing. It's just bad people, and that's a scary thing.
I haven't gotten to see The Invisible Man yet. I'm super excited to. But again, tying it back to like modern day concerns and real world stories. Like just from the trailer, like female concerns falling on deaf ears and being written off as, you know, insanity, and that I think that's super important. And the found footage, these movies are becoming cult classics now, but the Creep movies with Mark Duplass, so good. And it was really hard, like, going into that for Mark Duplass to do that for me, because I know him from The League, and that's a full-on comedy show. So for him to be able to pull off his performance in both those movies is really excellent. And again, real, and something interesting about horror is seeing filmmakers work without a lot. Like, Creep does not have any impressive effects work. It is a couple people with a camera in a house, and that's it for both those movies. And they completely work, and you completely buy into the characters and the story at hand and what's happening, and it feels real and it feels raw. And that's so great. And so the filmmaking strength is an interesting thing to bring into horror, because going on sort of the negative side of horror and why people, I think, still feel okay with discounting it as a genre is there are a lot of really bad horror movies that come out. And it's frustrating because the reason they come out is because it's so easy to make money off of them. You get a bunch of kids that have never been in a movie, you pay them the SAG-AFTRA minimum, you take them somewhere, film it in a spooky house or on a vacation somewhere or other, throw some fake blood, do a couple jump scares. That's that. You make it for $5 million, and then it'll make $60 million opening weekend when you release it in October, and that's that. But there's so many great filmmakers, the Ari Asters, the Jordan Peels, pouring their hearts and souls into horror, and I think they deserve respect. Robert Eggers, too. He did The Witch and Lighthouse. You know, really doing interesting things and moving the genre in really fascinating places.
I mean, if you look, kind of piggybacking off what you said about bad horror, I think it's easy, especially for horror sequels, to forget what the originals are about. I like to use the example of Alien and Nightmare on Elm Street. Alien is like a rape allegory. Yeah. Because it's an alien that forcefully impregnates you. I love Aliens. It's an action movie, though. Yes. And then the sequels are not good because they don't know what they're supposed to be.
Completely different from what that
And then Nightmare on Elm Street is a movie about children suffering for what their parents did.
Yes.
And their concerns falling on deaf ears and like being swept under the rug, like the younger generation being forgotten. And then the sequels are like, what if Freddy Krueger said a funny thing? It's they just forget what they're supposed to be.
Yeah, for sure.
I think going off of that too, like the secret to making a really great horror movie, and any movie in general, is to have characters that an audience can care about. And so many of these, you know, quote unquote bad horror movies are terrible characters, or no characters at all. You know, people that are just there to be tormented and then killed off. But you think about like people like Jordan Peele and Ari Aster, who are building their movies around characters that are either damaged or conflicted, or you know, something is going on with them that then welcomes this scary force or scary thing of nature. And that to me is like the core and what makes those movies interesting and worth rewatching and watching the first time. And so many movies don't do that though. So
A Quiet Place.
I
was waiting for you to mention
filmmaking.
it.
Oh yeah.
But no, I mean like the family is there's you care about that family, and you're very concerned when any of them makes any noise at all. You know, like it just works so well. Like that one I didn't see in theaters as well. I watched it in daylight. Just throwing it out there once again. But yeah, I mean the best horror movies I've seen is because I actually care about the people that are in them, and like I mean it's like a dumb example, but like Scooby-Doo literally works for a reason. Like they're solving mysteries, and you don't want anything to happen to the mystery gang, you know? And that literally translates to the best horror movies.
Yeah, another really great recent example is It Follows. The monster, demon, whatever is sexually transmitted. It's a fascinating framework to work in, and it's so good. And I think that's always been the thing with horror. There are always people making there's Silence of the Lambs, and we've talked about David Fincher a bunch before on this podcast with Zodiac. has maybe the best kill, and this goes into some of what works in Midsommar too. Filming, because the bad horror that we're talking about is overproduced and overly stylized. You get the stab from 30 different angles, and you get buckets and buckets of blood, and people like it, and sure, but something that Midsommar does, something that Zodiac does, and these films like this, is it will film your death or whatever's horrifying head on. It is not, you're not getting a bunch of different cuts to escape what's really going on. You are watching somebody just get stabbed. You're just looking at somebody getting stabbed, and that's horrifying. And that's, again, when you have these filmmakers making these movies, that's stuff that they understand. To, watching the knife and hearing screeches is like, that's not what's gonna stick with you.
Yeah, I agree. Something that I think successful horror movies do really well too is they have amazing sound mixing and sound editing. Mm-hmm. And I know I just mentioned it, but The Invisible Man, a movie that's out in theaters now, really has a score that elevates the film and increases the tension. And that's something else I wanted to mention, is that horror movies are the perfect example, or good horror movies at least, are the perfect example of how to create really strong, scary tension, Yeah. And movies like Us and Get Out and Midsommar do it so well. And it's not just having a loud noise to startle an audience. It's more than that. It's, having things build and having a great score to undercut your lines or whatever's happening on screen. And that, to me, is what makes a really great and effective horror film.
Yeah,
so.
Sound in general on its own can elicit fear.
Yeah.
Like, little secret for anybody. Most haunted places, if you believe in ghosts, that's cool. Most haunted places are not haunted. There's stuff wrong with the pipes, there's stuff wrong with that, and there's a frequency being emitted that naturally, primally, makes you afraid. And so because of that, you're already going in fearful of something, and so you're already walking into somewhere that's haunted, and you're already scared. And then you have that fear frequency, and that's where you're like, oh man, I feel something here. It's probably not a ghost. It's probably the pipes are busted and you're hearing a sound frequency. But it's crazy that stuff like that can just be manipulated to make you afraid. And there's something so deep in us that's afraid of that. Is really fascinating.
Yeah. Cool stuff.
Horror.
I think that wraps up our little discussion on horror.
Speaking of wraps, the best horror movie ever made is Under Wraps, Disney Channel original movie from the 90s.
Or Tom Cruise's The Mummy, speaking of
Or Brendan Fraser's The Mummy.
That movie's
yeah, I actually like that movie.
Yeah. We love you, Brendan Fraser. Come on the podcast.
Thanks for watching and thanks for listening. Gianni.
Flynn.
Luke.
Chase.
And we'll see you next time.
I'm scared.